Alrighty, well, joining me from Alabaster House, this is really exciting, Miss Kimberly.
Yes.
I cannot wait to get into this conversation because I used to live in D.C. I used to go on prayer walks around the Capitol. I used to go pray with senators and all these different types of people. But then I found out there's a whole organization that exists there, and that's you. Tell us what you're currently up to, because you've been, this thing has been there for 28 years, which is phenomenal. It's longer than I've been alive. And people often say Christians should be involved in politics or just pray for people in politics. But for that prayer piece portion of it, you've actually been there praying with senators, praying with representatives, taking territory in that way. What's your role in it all? Start there. What's going on?
Right. So I'm founder and executive director of Alabaster House, and I have been serving in that capacity of a spiritual resource, like you said, for 28 years. So there's just some amazing stories just over the years that we've had the privilege to be a part of, watching God really move behind the scenes. And that's what I love. Our three main points are confidential prayer, biblical devotions, and friendship. And so be surprised how valuable that third point is. I'll tell you just a quick story. My husband and I, we were meeting with a congressional couple, and they said, we can have anybody come in and share with us whatever preacher, ministry, you name it, right? It's the U.S. Capitol. You can have anybody come in. But he said, what I really get from you and Alabaster House is friendship. And what was so beautiful about that was that was just shortly after we had changed that third bullet point of our mission statement to reflect friendship. Well, so it's just a really neat way of God confirming that back to us. So there's a real importance. As you know, the higher you go in leadership, the less places of confidence these government leaders have. And so it was just, again, a way that God was echoing back to us, yes, this is valuable.
That's phenomenal. I used to work with a member of parliament up in Canada, and we had one man who would come faithfully by the offices and sit and pray, regardless of political party. And they would sit and they would intercede for people's families, for marriages. And that's one thing that I think is nobody really knows that these people exist. But you're the ones who exist to serve and to bless and to actually support. And it's right. Once you go higher up in leadership, it kind of dissolves.
Yeah, I'm thinking that not only are we there, to provide that support, friendship, but with our marriages. You'll see a huge statistic of unfortunate, I want to say, just marriages that don't last.
Yep.
And so, coming alongside them as a family, not just the member, but the spouse as well. So we do offer programming for both. So
really?
Yeah, so we've had retreats like a congressional marriage retreat. Anytime we have gatherings, we always want to include the member and the spouse. Those are that are in town, of course. Many of them stay back home in their home district. But anytime we can help foster a connection, right, between a member and a spouse, that's just even more value, because they don't often get those opportunities. So we're really about, I would say, the whole marriage and the whole family.
Yeah, very holistic.
Providing that resource for that. And a lot of times we'll pray for them together. So we do prayer appointments in the office. Okay. So we'll come by, and if the spouse is in town, I'll reach out also to the spouse and say, hey, we're going to connect, with the member. We'd love to have you there if you can pop in. And those have been very powerful times as well. So
can you give us a glimpse, no name telling, but can you give us a glimpse as to what that's actually like when you sit down, somebody's maybe a crisis or somebody's in a chaotic moment, what's going on in that situation?
I'll share, last year we launched something called GO, Government Outreach. And what it is it's a missions trip for to actually minister to government leaders. Everyone says, what is that? But they can understand missions to third world countries or this type of thing. Yeah, but how do you do missions like in the middle of the business workday and all of this, right?
Right.
But what we designed is a 3-day, 2-night mission trip. So we kick it off with the first night, educating in the administration. So whatever the administration is, this format will still remain. But we'll take them to the historic President's Church. We talk about the different cabinet leaders. We've even gone to some of the departments, and had opportunities to pray for some of the key leaders there. Okay. And so we're bringing in really teams that have a heart to pray for government, but they just don't know how, or they're just, not aware. So we're really giving like an equipping and an education for that. And back to your question about a story, this just so happened to occur on one of these Go Government outreach trips.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear.
So we brought in a team from another state. They flew in. And this particular day, as you know, Congress is always busy. So you're juggling between just all the many things on their schedule.
Yeah.
And so that particular day, they actually called for votes at the exact time of our meeting. So, so we're texting, we're running back and forth. And when can we get this? So we're able to get that pushed back to another time in the same day, on the day we were there. So what was beautiful about that is it actually freed up the members' schedule even a little bit more.
Nice.
So when we were there, it was pretty interesting because this particular member started sharing with us just their regrets of life. And our team was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're, sitting in this place and hearing something genuine, not a presentation, a PowerPoint, something surface level. And I said, let's see if we can just step into this moment as a conduit of healing, right, for this member. And it was just so beautiful to see how God worked through all the prayers of the team that was there that had signed up for the Go Government outreach. And at the end of the time, I mean, this member had tears in their eyes and said, they were just so taken with the work that God had done. So it really was a work of restoration. And that's something you'll never hear on the news.
Yeah, absolutely. And God cares about politics, but he really cares about the shaping, the formation of that human being and where their heart's at. And he's bringing you into these situations to be that alabaster box, to be that anointing, healing, that oil that flows. And it takes a person's yes to actually start this. So you're the founder of it. What actually brought you to the point of this is actually something that's so necessary in our government?
Well, we talked a little bit about touching areas of higher levels and leadership needs greater support, right?
Yeah.
But I think just for me, growing up in a leader household, my dad was a former professional football player for San Francisco 49ers and then the Washington Redskins. So that's how both my sister and I were born in Washington, D.C. So we already had a heart and a love for the city, our nation.
Yeah.
And I think many of those, like take your daughter to work days in the city, definitely had an impact on this. But, my dad in a lot of his roles were working with even some of the same people that I'm working with. His was in a political arena specifically, and ours is helping bring them, encouragement, support. We've hosted different chapels and you can think about the razor wire perimeter, that went all around Capitol Hill, and many, ministries and faith people just stood down during that time. But I just thought, oh my goodness, it's like when there's a fire, those engines need to be running. So of course, we were in there, and I was saying, to the members and the spouses, we were gathering at different times, and just support them when they needed the most.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it was just a beautiful thing to be in that place where they could still be themselves, still get the care and support that they needed. And it's just so important. So we were saying, why? Why is this important? These leaders, not just only in Congress, but also the three branches of government is where we serve. And also with governors for spouses and ambassadors on their spouses. Anyone that is in this type of leadership has the opportunity to actually impact each and every one of our lives. So as a result, we're very geared towards making sure we believe that a healthy faith, a healthy family, it produces healthy decisions on behalf of our nation, which impact each and every one of us. And that's why it's so important for Alabaster House.
That's a huge why you're there. Interesting. Okay, so you serve all the branches of government. I didn't know that part where you go into the governors and extended there. How does that all work? We were talking yesterday a little bit about the administrative nightmare that this must be. How big is your team? I'm curious, because how do you do it all? That's a lot of people and you're constantly pouring. It's not just data entry. You're pouring into people on top of serving them in other ways. What's that like?
I think a lot of what we do is relationally based, right? We don't do anything outside of that. And so we start to foster the relationship. So one example I could give over 28 years. And so we were, coming on in the 1990s, this kind of thing, late 1990s. And I started a connection with a member of Congress in a specific district and their family. And so then they retired. We still now, decades later, are connected with that first member and still connecting, praying, just serving them.
Wow.
The next member comes on, and it was interesting because I was at an event and they was a little Q&A afterwards. And so there was kind of this question that was spiritual. And I thought, okay, I got to go over there and find out who it was congressional spouses. So find out who these spouses are. And I went to the table and I said, hey, I'm Kimberly, the founder of Alabaster House. We're here to, serve you and just encourage you. And they said, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to meet you. And I went, oh, here I am. So how
Your name had transferred there.
Yeah, it had already been communicated to them when you come to Washington to come and find Kimberly.
Okay.
And so that was a beautiful thing. And now we're in the third seat of that same district, and we're connected with them as well. So how you're kind of, asking the question, how do you connect with all of these people and how does it work?
Yeah.
And a lot of it is we get connected and those relationships are just so strong and healthy that they end up being a life source for the other members and their families that come here. And so that's just a lot of growth. We could always use volunteers. So we have a number of different programs and things.
Let's get into that. What are some of the programs that people can plug into?
So we mentioned just recently, last year we launched the Go Government Outreach, and we were just talking about that. So that's a fabulous opportunity. If you have a church community, if you have a group that you're connected with, and maybe it's a prayer group that would like to come up and support what our government leaders are doing, that is actually an on board to something we're calling Alabaster House Ambassadors. So we are looking for 535 pastors and ministry leaders to be an extension of what we do on the national level back home in their home state. So that is, we're talking about how would we support our leaders and looking for safe, healthy leaders, like not ones that'll go, oh, come to my congregation, and I want to see if you can get my son into the Naval Academy, all those kinds of things.
Yep.
We're always giving. So there's a bit of a culture that we have at Alabaster House where we're supporting, we're not taking. So that would be our Alabaster House ambassadors.
Okay.
And then our leadership summit, of course, that we're on our third annual. And that's an excellent opportunity to get involved. It's open to anyone, right? So you could be in any, business, executives, ministry, veterans. We have athletes, government members of Congress.
Very cool.
So May 19th and 20th.
Yes, I'm going to get to this.
Yes, I'm just jumping in there.
I'm so excited about it.
But I'm thinking it's just literally a few days after the administration will rededicate America as one nation under God. So it'll be Rededicate 250. That's on May 17th. So I'm sure a lot of our folks that are listening today will want to be involved in that. And then our summit starts on May 19th and goes into the 20th. So it's a perfect opportunity to just connect right there in Washington, D.C.
Wow. So what's going to be happening? We'll be there covering the America 250 on that Sunday. What are you doing that 19th and 20th that people can be aware of and start signing up for?
Sure. So our website is alabasterhouse.org, and you can click on the Leadership Summit to get all the registration details, sponsorship. It's a great opportunity to put your brand in a different market, and we have different packages that are affiliated with that. But what's going to happen is we're going to open on a big, strong opening with America's 250. So we'll do a veterans panel, and of course, thanking so many of our military for the freedoms that we have.
Absolutely.
And so we do have 2 Purple Heart recipients that are going to be on that panel. Wow. And our theme is leading in times of crisis. And because of that, we want to highlight different leaders that we can learn from. Yeah. So it's an equipping opportunity. So we have the veterans, we'll have NFL players, so kind of some fine and sizzle about overcoming obstacles and how we can persevere when times get difficult. And then on the 20th, we'll be right inside the House of Representatives. on site on Capitol Hill, so we can. Is one of the things we're especially known for are the roundtables that we do with members of Congress, not from a lectern or a podium, but actually seated at the table with us. So there's a real dialogue that's taking place there, and that is what is so amazing because you can find out what's happening culturally, legislatively, or economically that impacts us as leaders, wherever we are.
Okay.
So
That's a lot of work.
it's a lot, and I was going to say we also are launching this year a round of executive roundtables.
Right.
So we'll have different topics. So it can be Veterans Affairs, like women in leadership, leadership legacy, Israel, international business, small business, so AI and technology, commerce and trade. There's going to be so many things to choose from that I think there really is something for everyone.
And you have a very special speaker coming in.
Well, we have a lot of special speakers coming in for that. So we have different keynotes that we'll have. We're going to have also the Securities and Exchange Commissioner, Commissioner Hester Pierce. She'll be talking with us about the economy and markets, and that's so important for us to know. I want to just share the genesis of this really came during the shutdown and during COVID and the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
We saw so many ministries and businesses close.
Shut down.
And we were really on that first wave of information because we've had those trusted relationships for decades. And so before Zoom was a household thing, we saw the kids running across the screen and all this.
Yep.
And we were praying with those members of Congress that we're going to have to be, making key decisions that were impacting all of us. And I thought, so we really were on that first wave of information. And I thought, what can we create that can actually help equip other leaders to be more effective and how to navigate crises? So whether it's a crisis in your personal home, whether it's a crisis in your community, whether it's a national crisis, all of these are designed to be under our, what we would call our leadership development. So it's equipping.
Very good.
So that's a lot of the genesis of how this came to be.
That's incredible. Do you have a team who you're like bouncing ideas off, or does the Holy Spirit just give you downloads, both and? Where does this all come from?
I think a lot of it is just the experience that we have in a specific field and in this space. And you and I were talking, Mateo, last night about just the opportunity to navigate, bringing in the different members and how does that work. And it's always a busy schedule when they're in Congress. So they're able to stop in with us, connect with us in a meaningful way. We also often like to pray for them. So there's definitely some touch points there that are pretty powerful. But yeah, it's definitely very power-packed with a lot of keynotes and information that people are going to be able to learn from and take back to where you're planted. And
that's a very important key part of it.
Yes.
A little bit more personal question. Since the beginning of this journey, how have you maybe changed your perspective on what happens in government, humanizing the representatives themselves? What are some of the things on that front that maybe your prayers have changed for government leaders? What's going on that front?
I think just there's so many opportunities that we've been a part of, things that we've seen. I think I want to echo the James 5:16, the effective fervent prayer, the righteous availeth much. I would just want to say, get involved, get equipped, get the knowledge. One of the things that we do is we actually have an email update where we can send out information on how people can play.
Very good.
And that's so important. So you can find that at alabasterhouse.org. And you're talking about how have your prayers changed. With each ministry opportunity, we send out an email letting people know, hey, this is what's happening.
Okay.
We'd love covet your prayers to help support that. And you will find that as we have that undergoing support and ongoing support, that often, like when we've done some of these retreats at our home, we send them out with a journal, maybe for an hour to an hour and a half by themselves.
Okay.
Which is kind of crazy, right? We're asking leaders to sit. We're out on about 10 acres, and so we have a lot of benches and spaces. It's very scenic, and so we do have ministry teams that will come and pray for them as they're out there. But what I love is that we've often heard we give them time to reflect in their journal.
Okay.
And we encourage them to just write down some of the heavy things they're struggling with and those are of nature. But we've had a lot of them say, hey, we could have sworn you read what was in our journal. I thought, oh my goodness, I give credit to God because I know that we have that. We're talking about who's involved, how does it work, but we have that team and we'd love for you to be a part of it. And we know that just makes such a big difference in the lives of the breakthrough. So we've seen salvations actually as part of this. So these are rare.
That was going to be my next question.
They're not, a lot of members of Congress already have an established connection with the Lord or they have a faith background. But sometimes it's just encouraging them to just really lean into their faith a little bit more. But it's a great opportunity for them to just be built up and then to go forward. Right?
Wow. So how many would you say salvations you've seen?
Literally a handful in 28 years.
Hey, haven't rejoiced over one.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily that's something you're going to see all the time. But when the Lord connects you, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so right here, right now, what are some of the top maybe 3 to 5 things that believers today, this week, can be praying for our members, praying for what's coming up in your organization?
Yeah, I think definitely you can be praying always for the health of the family, right? So the marriages. Just to remember that not when the members of Congress are here, often their families are back in the state.
Yeah.
So they're doing all kinds of things. So by the time they come back, they spend maybe a few days back at home and then they go back to D.C. again. Yeah. So just the fostering of the health of the marriage and the family, quality time that you can have together is very important. And I think knowing that also gives room. Given that I'm from an athletic background, I'm always looking for ways we can be on the offense instead of defense.
Love it.
Offense would be just creating opportunities for them to foster those relationships while they're in D.C. So I often encourage the spouses to come to D.C. and not give a very long window for months on end without having the spouse come to D.C. and be a part, which is very difficult to catch up all of those shared moments in between, a very busy legislative work.
Yeah. Wow. So pray for the families, pray for the marriages.
Families, marriages. And I'll also say just for the protection of their decisions. So that could be on a national level, whether that's legislatively. But I think a personal level is also equally valid and even more important, to be fair. Because if they can't hold their families together, they often will not be able to do what the constituents actually elected them to do. So I really think, the personal decisions they make. We have walked with different members and their families who ended up with failed marriages as well. And that's what I mean. We need to be proactive as opposed to finding out about something after the fact. So I would say, offering opportunities to pray and cover them is just on a personal decision. I'll just give you some idea. What are personal decisions they make? So it could be to take that moment to go out late. It could be to be in an environment that you never thought would be compromising, but all of a sudden you enter into something that opens the door ever so slightly. And because they're often running on such a fast schedule, the sleep that they have, things like this, it's very easy to unintentionally open the doors. And once that door just keeps opening, that's where you find yourself in a place that you never intended to be in. So personal decisions.
That's very, very important. I don't think many people see the headlines. Many people just think politicians are just out there. They're just kind of higher echelon. They're untouchable. But there's a real human heart. There's real human decisions being made. And to actually see them as image bearers of God, regardless of background, regardless of political association, and to pray for the heart of their leaders, that's really important. I thank you for what you do. Very much so.
Thank you.
Very much so. Well, if you'd share with people how they can give, how they can support. I'd
love to have you be a part of our email updates. That's the prayer card that we were talking about earlier. And that you can find on our website at alabasterhouse.org. And that'll also give you opportunities for invitations, right? Some of the different events that we have coming up. So if you want to be a part of that, find out what's happening, please sign up. That'll give you invitations and prayer. And of course, an opportunity to give and to support so many of the programs and things that we do, whether it's chapels, retreats, coffees that we host, even being involved in the Leadership Summit. So there's a give button right there at alabasterhouse.org. And if you sign up as a monthly giver, we would love to give you a CD. We have a promotion there for one of our worship artists who's a part of Alabaster House. And she actually wrote some of the songs that we did for our coffees in a very critical time to minister to many of the spouses and the members of Congress. So that gift is yours for any ongoing monthly partnership donation. So you'll find that at alabasterhouse.org.
Very good. We'll have it all up on the screen, so everybody go support them, go bless them, pray for these workers in the field. We're very grateful to have you on today.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing to be with all your listeners.
Thank you.